Count Tigrevermund, a mighty warrior along with an impressive 25,000-strong Brune army, gets his fancy butt handed to him by a measly squad of 5,000.
Come on, man.
Under the command of Eleanor Volteria, a war maiden. To make matters worse, he gets dragged back to her village to continue his lineage as a glorified prisoner. I'll be referring to Tigrevermund as Tiger and Eleonora as Elin. I'll also interchangeably use War Maiden and Vanadis. They mean the same thing. Tiger, one of the few survivors of the brutal massacre, limps away from the battlefield while thinking about how all his men were easily annihilated. He is then met with his nemesis, Elin, the War Maiden. He tries to use his last few arrows to fight, but there's so little he can do against a War Maiden. It's like putting Superman and Hawkeye in the same room. Elin captures Tiger and drags him like a sack of potatoes to her buzzing turf, Leitmeritz. After a nightmare where Zion Thenardier pulls a Bakudo and mocks him relentlessly, Tiger wakes up as a prisoner in a strange land. A letter gets sent back to Brune to pay a ransom that's about 3 times their tax income within 50 days or their Tiger won't be released. Tiger confronts Elin and tries to negotiate the deal, but she declines his offer, stating that she has made up her mind and if they fail to meet her demands, he'll officially become her property. Elin then sets Tiger up for a bow demonstration with something that looks like it came from the dollar store, just to mess with him a bit. When it's Tiger's turn, he misses his shots like a stormy weather forecast, and the other competitors make fun of him.
Oh, shit. Here we go again.
An assassin suddenly shows up and shoots an arrow at Elin, who skillfully blocks it by channeling the wind powers of Arifar. The assassin then tries to run away, but Tiger surprises everyone by shooting an arrow into the assassin's foot from an impressive distance, despite his weak weapon. Elin, feeling guilty, contemplates the rather drastic measure of executing the other archers who had made fun of Tiger. Tiger, however, pleads for their pardon, telling her that's a bit overboard. Elin then tells him she specifically captured him because she had heard about him and had fallen for his skills with the bow. She adds that the fact that he still tried to fight, even though they had already lost the war, amazed her, and she just wanted him for herself. She asks him to serve under her, promising him special treatment, but he turns down her proposal, indicating that he has a place to return to and protect, the kingdom of Alsace, which he inherited from his father.
Emotional, damn it!
Days turn into episodes, and Tiger begins to settle into life in Leitmeritz. His popularity grows as all the other citizens begin to admire him as a man of great talent with a bow, though a few still harbor residual discontent. One day, while strolling through an unusual route, Tiger stumbles upon a baby dragon and approaches it, but he inadvertently stumbles upon Elin taking a bath. He quickly turns away and apologizes. Later that night, Rurik, a fellow archer, brings news of a captured intruder to Tiger. The intruder turned out to be none other than Bertrand, Tiger's family attendant. Bertrand had snuck in to deliver the shocking news that the Thenardier army was mobilizing 3,000 troops towards Alsace. This makes Tiger fume with anger. Just as he was about to make a grand exit, Elin appears in true rival fashion, blocking his path and demanding to know his intentions. Tiger, unwavering like a hero in the final battle, tells her to step aside, setting the stage for an epic confrontation under the moonlight. In the land of Nemethicum, Duke Thenardier, the ruler, sends his son Zion on a quest to raze Alsace to the ground. He gives him a troop of 3,000 men and 2 dragons to ambush the leaderless kingdom. Meanwhile, in Leitmeritz, Tiger is in full One Piece mode, desperate to rush back and defend his homeland, but Elin poses herself as an obstruction. He asks her to let him go and save his people, and she asks him if he thinks he's Sun Jin Woo, that can solo 3,000 soldiers. Bro then wakes up to reality and realizes how dumb he'd be to just aimlessly charge there, but as their leader, he still has an obligation to protect his people, so he makes a bold request. He asks Elin to lend him her troop, and she agrees, but being the greedy ass she's always been, she asks him what he'll use to pay her back. He asks her to name her price, and she just smiles and tells him she wants all of Alsace under her jurisdiction. Seeing how he doesn't have any other options, Tiger agrees and they set out for battle with 1,000 men. In Alsace, Teta, Tiger's loyal maid, is pulling off an evacuation operation that make you wonder if she's a secret hero in My Hero Academia. Yet, like any good anime protagonist, she decides to stay behind in Vaughn Manor, Tiger's home, ready to face whatever comes her way. While hanging out in Vaughn Manor, Tita starts having flashbacks of her own Sword Art Online cutscene moment when Tiger had channeled his inner Kirito and promised he'd come back safe and sound from the Dynat War. Little did she know that he'd end up like Kobe in the Blackbeard Pirates base. She clings onto a black bow like it's her very own Excalibur, hoping Tiger will make his epic return. The Thenardier army storms into Alsace, looting anything that isn't nailed down, while Zion watches the mayhem with the glee of a windbreaker thug. However, Zion is bored since his dragons, touted by Thenardier as a dire warning to Brünn citizens, are off-limits for this rampage. To his surprise, Alsis is a ghost town. All the inhibits have been evacuated to a shrine which is off-limits even in times like this. Annoyed and looking for where to start some trouble, Zion sets his sights on Vorn Manor and decides to start his destruction there. Inside, Titta confronts him, telling him to scram. Zion decides to try to take advantage of her, so he chases her through the manor and tries to assault her. Just then, an arrow pierces his hand, making him cry even more pathetically than Light Yagami did when he finally got caught. Tiger reveals himself and has a dramatic Sailor Moon reunion with Titta, who weeps with joy at seeing him again. During the reunion, one of Zion's soldiers hiding in the bushes tries to pull a fast one by firing an arrow at Titta, but Tiger activates his Super Saiyan Ultra Instinct, catches it just before it hits her head, and fires it back, completely obliterating the enemy. His bow gets broken in the process, and Titta hands him the black bow, which is a relic his father had left him before passing away. In the typical cliché main character aura, he holds the bow and thinks to himself that it's finally time.
It's about time.
During the battle, the Thenardier army loses 300 soldiers, so they retreat into hiding but are soon to be re-strategizing. Ellen is pretty worried, noting that even without any casualties, Zion's army still outnumbers them like stormtroopers in Star Wars, so she decides to take advantage of the moment by smashing the enemy while they're caught in their Naruto training arc.
Let's go!
Meanwhile, Zion is flabbergasted by Ellen's army's surprise arrival, jumping to the conclusion that Tiger has pulled a Code Geass and switched sides. Undeterred and with dragons on his side, Zion vows to stomp Tiger and his crew into the ground, seeking payback for the showdown at Dynat Plains. Ellen makes 100 men from her troops stay behind to protect the city while the rest of them go into battle. They charge into the Moleshine Plains where Zion and his men are and meet a fraction of them. Zion had divided his men into 3 formations. Tiger and the Legmarit's army manage to stomp their first formation until they run into an Earth Dragon that stops them dead in their tracks like the people of Wano when they first saw Kaido. With Ellen's troops keeping the Thenardier soldiers busy, she decides to take on the dragon solo, unleashing her Vanitas power Vita. The War Maiden pulls off a move straight out of the One Punch Man anime and takes out the dragon with just a single attack, leaving everybody in awe. Zion, traumatized by the loss of his dragon, suddenly gets news of 2,000 reinforcements arriving. Panicked, he orders a full retreat, not realizing that Tiger has pulled a Shadow Clone Jutsu at the sunset, making a mere 100 soldiers, and a bunch of horses look like an entire army. Meanwhile, Lim and Rurik execute a false retreat, luring some Thenardier soldiers into a trap and reducing their already scanty number drastically. With the Legmarit's army closing in from all sides, Zion and his remaining soldiers find themselves trapped like rats in a cage. Out of options, Zion challenges Tiger to a duel, and Tiger accepts while Ellen gives him room since it's his fight. Zion picks up a lance and teases Tiger for insisting on using a bow. Tiger fires an arrow at him while they charge at each other from a distance, which Zion easily blocks with his shield. The same process is repeated twice again, and Zion mocks Tiger, fully unaware of his plan. In a cool MC manner, Tiger makes a 4th shot, which this time around pulls the Dragon Ball as he power up and blasts through the shield, critically wounding Zion. He had simultaneously targeted the same spot on Zion's shield to make it weaker. Just as Tiger is about to end Zion's career, his men rush in to protect their commander. Ellen also orders her men to attack, but Zion uses the distraction to hop on the second dragon to escape, flying out of Ellen's wind reach. Suddenly, Tiger hears a voice from the Black Bow urging him to shoot. Confused but trusting his instincts, he notches an arrow that borrows Arafar's wind magic for support and takes aim at Zion. The arrow shoots at incredible speed, pulling off a Gundam-level precision strike, taking down both Zion and his dragon in midair. With Zion's death, Ellen roars in triumph, declaring Tiger's victory, and the remaining Thenardier army accepts defeat and surrenders peacefully. The following morning, just like in a typical medieval anime drama, Titta, who is usually Tiger's morning alarm, stumbles upon Ellen with a sword in Tiger's mouth while she brings him breakfast. She totally freaks out about it, and Ellen explains that she's tried to wake him up, but he proved to be a deep sleeper, so she tried to use her special technique to do the task. Ellen tells them she has to report to the capital for some official business, then she leaves. Tiger then decides to head out to check on the villagers, and Titta sticks to him like glue. Meanwhile, at the capital, Ellen faces the wrath of King Victor, who is as grumpy as Vegeta when someone messes with his Saiyan pride. He lashes out at her for her reckless act of leading an army into Brünn territory without following due procedure and poses to punish her appropriately, but Sofia Obertes, King Victor's mediator and ambassador, swoops in like Sailor Moon, using her diplomatic prowess to calm the storm, leaving everyone relieved. Heading out of the palace, Ellen runs into Ludmilla Lori, an old acquaintance and fellow war maiden, who often gets on her nerves. The two girls go cat and dog for a while until Sophia, Sophie for short, intervenes again. Back in Alsace, Tiger runs into Mashes, his father's old friend who had been away. Mashes gives him a stare-down reminiscent of Goku sizing up Vegeta before a training session.
His moves are incredible. Finally, I'm going to rip him apart.
And demands answers from the whole situation. Tiger explains everything from scratch, leaving no stone unturned in Mashes, realizing his assumptions are as off-base as Team Rocket's latest scheme. Apologizes faster than Naruto can shout Sasuke. Tiger announces his plans to take on both Thenardier and Ganelon, and Mashes agrees to be his trusted sidekick, like Nanami fighting alongside Itadori Yuji. As he sets out to rally allies, Tigger's determination shines even brighter than Saitama's head. He meets up with Ellen at the Kikamura mansion in the Vosges Mountains, where she spills the tea about her chat with the king, who has surprisingly agreed to help him out with his plans, thanks to Sophie's intervention. She also tells him there are plenty of other Vanitas who are going to come against him, preparing his mind for the worst. Shortly after, Lori shows up and tells Tiger she wants to accompany him. Of course, this pisses Ellen off. On their journey to Rodnik, they get ambushed by a group of assassins called the Seven Chains. One of the assassins, who is obviously a big fan of Orochimaru, controls a poisonous snake to bite Lim, Ellen's personal assistant. Tiger immediately sucks out the poison, but the venom is so strong, it totally knocks Lim out. Lori then goes full Hitsugaya on the assassins and completely obliterates them all. She calls Ellen a failure of a war maiden for not being able to protect her subordinates, while she tells them to head on while she finds a doctor. With Lim still in critical condition, they race to Rodnik faster than Goku chasing after a Senzu bean. In the steamy depths of a hot bath in Rodnik, Lori, Ellen, and Lim find themselves enjoying a much-needed soak. Lim expresses her heartfelt thanks to everyone for their daring rescue mission. Meanwhile, Tiger has a classic NM mishap, stumbling upon Lori in her birthday suit. To cut the story short, he ends up with full handprints on his face. To smooth over the awkwardness, Tiger decides to treat Lori to some of his famous soup at the bustling Rodnik marketplace. Despite enjoying the meal, the ungrateful bitch still leaves to assemble a huge army of her own against Leitmeritz. Ellen had predicted it like a Gundam pilot, and her strategic foresight proved impeccable. Lori marches her troops toward Leitmeritz, and as a result, Ellen ends up being sandwiched between the forces of Duke Thenardier and now Lori's. Meanwhile, the dastardly Thenardier is up to his old tricks, scheming to attack Alsace again, making her a pea between three pods. Despite Tiger's best diplomatic efforts, including sending an envoy letter that would have made Lelouch Lamperouge proud, Luer is having none of it. She brushes off any talk of a peace treaty and pushes forward with her assault, even as her generals whisper words of caution. The two armies end up clashing in the Burkina Plains, a battle that will definitely rival any clash between two titans, excluding the founding titan though. It plays out as a bloody stalemate, with casualties in the hundreds. Ellen rallies her forces and launches a siege on Lori's stronghold in the Tatra Mountains. However, Mother Nature decides to play spoiler with some extreme weather, and the formidable defenses of Tatra Castle turn Ellen's forces back. Despite Lim's protests that are as passionate as Naruto's Talk no Jutsu, Ellen remains resolute on launching another attack on the seemingly impenetrable fortress. Tiger then comes up like Batman and suggests a scouting mission through the treacherous mountains to find a shortcut. The proud princess seems adamant, but nothing comes close to the determination of a man. Lim disguises him in some animal hides and he sets out. While on his daring scouting mission, Tiger stumbles upon Lori engaged in a spirited fox hunt. She happens to witness his battle skills up close and immediately gets interested in him. Remember, he's still in disguise. He introduces himself as Urs, and they randomly start talking under the moonlight in a cave, which leads to Lori revealing personal stories about herself. When it's sunrise, Lori bids the mysterious hunter goodbye and returns to Tatra Castle. Tiger, like Detective Kuminen, skillfully follows her back to her fortress and discovers the location. His mission is a success. With Tiger's newfound intel, Ellen and the Leitmeritz army take the shortcut he discovers. Unfortunately, they find the castle's security cranked up to Wall Maria levels. Ellen recklessly charges in an attempt to smash through the gates but fails royally. Her reckless act alerts the guards in the castle, and they start attacking them from within, leaving them nowhere to hide. Desperate times call for desperate measures, and Tiger makes a plea to Arifar, asking to borrow its power once again. The Wind Spirit responds, and Tiger fires a shot that does the deed. With the gates reduced to rubble, Ellen rallies her troops and leads a fierce siege on the castle. In the battle at Tatra Fortress, Ellen and Laurie are duking it out like two Dragon Ball Z warriors until the clash of the titans is rudely interrupted by an assassin who charges at the both of them. Tiger swiftly takes the assassin down before he can even get a shot off. Upon seeing his expert marksmanship and distinctive skills, Laurie finally pieces together that Tiger is actually Urs. The spoiled brat tries to play hard to get and she confronts Tiger, asking why he confronted her in the woods. But Tiger, being the Rizzler, smooth talks his way through. Impressed by Tiger's Riz skills, Laurie declares her neutrality, bringing the epic showdown at Tatra Fortress to an end. Meanwhile, Roland, Brune's mightiest knight, is having fun repelling and decimating the Sackstein army single-handedly. He then receives a letter on King Farron's behalf, prompting him to gather his Navarre knights and head back to Brune with orders to kill Tiger. In about a month, Tiger's influence has grown like Luffy's crew, amassing an army of 5,000 troops, with Lim and Ellen as his prime supporters. The coalition army, now proudly known as the Silver Meteor Army, is led by the powerful trio and ready for battle. Sophie, the war maiden from the palace, appears and reveals that she has been sent to their camp on official business as an envoy. She then delivers bad news that the king has fallen sick and the person holding his position has labeled Tiger a traitor. As a result, his noble status is revoked and Alsace falls under Brune's control. Despite this bombshell, Tiger stands firm in his resolve, convincing his allies to rally against this new threat like true Shonen heroes. On the battle-scarred Orange Plains, the Silver Meteor Army and Navarre Knights clash like two rival factions in the Wano arc. Roland easily decimates his foes left and right. Ellen engages Roland in a fierce duel and barely manages to tank his attack. Roland commends her for being the first person to take a hit from him and still remain standing, but there's still a massive power difference between them. It's like trying to stand up to All Might in his prime. Just as Ellen is about to kiss the dust, Tiger makes a dramatic entrance, coming to rescue his master from her oppressor. Roland shifts his focus to Tiger, ready to take him down, but Tiger, however, displays some epic maneuvering skills and shoots an arrow into the sky in a high arc. Using this distraction, he grabs Ellen and makes a swift escape. Roland tries to charge after them, but in an unexpected twist, his horse gets struck in the head by the arrow Tiger shot above, sending him tumbling. Ellen starts to celebrate their narrow escape, only to realize that Tiger sustained a fatal injury from Roland in his quest to save her. Some enemies then start approaching, but Sophie appears like a magical girl ready to save the day. She urges Ellen to flee, promising to hold off the Navarre Knights on her own. Ellen and Tiger make their getaway as Sophie stands her ground, prepared to face the advancing knights with the resolve of a true warrior. Sophie easily roasts all the small fry coming at her. Then Roland appears to switch things up. Though she's clearly overpowered by him, she holds her ground for a short while. She then reveals that her objective was mainly to buy time for her friends to get away as she disappears. Just as she vanishes, a soldier reports to Roland that an ambush of about 300 skilled soldiers under the leadership of Mashes are on their way to attack them. This forces even the Incredible Hulk to retreat immediately. Back at the Silver Meteor Army's camp, Tiger is yet to wake up, so Tidus is by his side like a kid buying something from a candy store. Mashes informs everyone about the dire situation in the palace. King Farron's frail condition has made him a puppet for opportunistic ministers. Mashes shares his narrow escape from assassins in the capital thanks to Sophie's timely intervention. Ellen, embodying the spirit of Erza Scarlet, visits Tiger and vows to lead their forces to victory with Sophie and Mashes by her side. Meanwhile, Olivier, Ronald's subordinate, reports rumors from various reliable sources about Tiger's supposed betrayal stemming from an incident in Alsace. Despite these murmurings, Roland remains determined to complete his mission no matter what. The next day, the Silver Meteor Army charges into battle against the Navarre Knights, only to be initially outclassed by their Crescent Moon formation. Meanwhile, Tiger wakes up from his slumber to find his black bow glowing brighter than a regular Mon's display screen. The bow leaves him with Tita accompanying to an eerie temple in a nearby Mash. As they venture inside, Tita reveals that the temple is dedicated to Turna Fall, the goddess of night, darkness, and death. Suddenly, in a twist fit for Blue Exorcist, the goddess possesses Tita to test Tiger's resolve. It gives him a rather difficult task to shoot Tita with an arrow and promises to give him the power he desires only if he has the wits to complete the task. Tiger uses a main character cheat and manages to free Tita from Turna Fall's grasp without harming her. He had applied some sort of inhumane power to the arrow so it dispersed, thereby hitting the target and not hurting her in the process. The goddess gives him respect as well as the promised power. As Tiger rushes to find Ellen, the tides of battle shift in favor of the Silver Meteor Army. The Navarre Knights find themselves stuck in a mud pool, turning them into sitting ducks for Lim's ambush unit. Ellen and Sophie, on the other hand, team up against Roland and manage to push him to a wall, but the Black Knight shrugs off their powerful Vitas easily. Just as Roland is about to show the girls a glimpse of heaven, Tiger's arrow swoops in like a deus ex machina and saves their asses. Roland confronts Tiger about the Alsace incident and Tiger tells him the whole truth. However, Roland sticks to his code of chivalry, honoring his duty to the king. Still wounded, Tiger fires a charge arrow at Roland, and although Roland deflects it, the resulting explosion sends both him and the Vanitas flying. In a surprising turn of events, Roland, with his hands too numb to move, admits defeat and surrenders to Tiger. After the Never Knights return to Brune's western borders to bolster defenses, Roland, despite warnings from Mashes and Tiger, heads back to Nice to see the king, brandishing Durandal as a token of alliance. Unfortunately, before he can meet King Farron, Roland falls victim to Ganelon's devious plot. Trapped in a room, the punishment given to him for failing to defeat Tiger's army comes in the form of highly poisonous bees, ending his journey in a tragic yet honorable manner. Just like Whitebeard, he died while standing. Meanwhile, Ellen rushes off to Legnica to aid Sasha, a fellow Vanitas who urgently needs help repelling another Vanitas attack. She leaves full command of the Silver Meteor army to Tiger, pending her return. Roland's death leaves Brune more vulnerable than an RPG party without a healer, and Muzinal seizes the opportunity to invade, capturing Agnes citizens as slaves and laying waste to villages. Thenardier mobilizes his forces to counter the invasion, while Tiger leads the Silver Meteor army south to fend off the invaders. During a scouting mission, Tiger and Rurik discover some heavily guarded slaves and manage to rescue a girl named Regin. By late evening, the Muzinal general Kashim orders his 3,000 troops to crush Tiger's 200, but ends up in a crafty trap set by the Silver Meteor army's shadow units. The next day, Tiger launches another ambush, whittling down the Muzinal army from 20,000 to 18,000 soldiers. Enraged, Kashim resorts to executing some of the slaves to draw Tiger out, accompanied by 600 Brune soldiers. Tiger responds to the bait. Kashim, underestimating Tiger, soon finds himself ambushed by the ejected army. In a scene worthy of the American Sniper movie, Tiger shoots an arrow from 300 Alsan away, which hits Kashim's head and kills him instantly. With their leader's death, the Muzinal army totally freaks out and tries to escape, but the Silver Meteor captures every single one of them and takes them into custody. Victory is secured over the Muzinal army, and the slaves being held captive are all set free. Some of the slaves hold resentment towards them for not striking earlier, thereby leading to some of them's deaths. But the majority of the slaves are just grateful they can live as normal human beings again. Silver Meteor celebration is short-lived as they receive news of a 30,000-strong main force heading their way. Tiger and his archer unit attempt to hold them off, but their efforts seem futile against the relentless tide. Just when things look bleak, Lori and her Olmutz army arrive in the nick of time, saving the day like Spider-Man on his way to work.
I got you, homie!
In a nostalgic flashback, we witness Ellen and Lori locked in an epic clash, like a showdown between two rival scions. They've had this indescribable beef for a long while and always resort to fighting. Their intense battle is abruptly halted by Sasha, who, acting as the Vanitas mediator at the time, swoops in like a seasoned S-class hero. She tells the two of them to team up for a spar against her and then offers them two conditions. If any of them manages to land a scratch on her, she'll do whatever they want for the rest of the day. But if they can't, the cat and dog have to apologize to each other and make up. Long story short, the clash ends with Sasha whooping their asses the same way Kakashi whooped Naruto and Sasuke's asses. Ellen and Lim arrive in Legnica to visit Sasha, who is now bedridden with illness. Sasha, in true anime mentor fashion, lays out the situation in Legnica to them, explaining that Elizaveta Fomina, another war maiden, is attacking due to a shady conspiracy involving her and some pesky pirates. Determined to help her ailing friend, Ellen decides to confront Lisa and Boroslo. She gears up for the battle, promising to fight for Sasha's sake and put an end to the chaos orchestrated by this pirate alliance. While she prepares to head to the battlefield, Sasha teases her about the reports she has been hearing about her and the Alsace boy, and it gets her flustered. Elsewhere in the land, Kiri Shahim Balamir, the Muzinal army general, is bored and wants to hasten up the battle. He thinks hard and then comes up with an interesting idea. He orders an envoy to go to the battlefield, and if they see that the war maiden with Tiger is as beautiful as the rumors, they should start attacking them immediately, but if otherwise, they should return without doing anything. Meanwhile, in Ags, Lori joins forces with the Silver Meteor army, plotting with Tiger and his crew on how to outsmart and defeat the Muzinal army. Tiger isn't entirely convinced by Lori's tactics, but he's willing to give them a shot, perhaps with the kind of hopeful skepticism Luffy might show when facing a new opponent. Ellen takes command of Sasha's army and leads them to the battlefield against Elizaveta and her army. The orders are given and everybody tries to pick on someone their own size. Ellen and Elizaveta charge at each other and fight toe-to-toe for a while, but there's a slight power difference with Ellen in the advantage. As a true cavalry, Elizaveta surrenders and accepts defeat, even though she can clearly still fight. She then gives Ellen intel about the strategies and huge reinforcements that have been sent to the Muezzin army, so they at least be able to proceed with caution. Curies, trying to stay one step ahead, splits his numerous armies into 7 platoons to defend their convoy like a shrewd chess master anticipating every move on the board, but Tigris still vows to lead his forces to victory no matter the odds. Since the envoy he sent hasn't returned, Curies concludes that they've started the battle. Word reaches him that during the small spa they engaged in with the enemy, they've been able to deduce that the enemies are quite lacking in numbers compared to them. Curies then tries to take advantage of that fact. In their quest, Lori and Tiger use a surprise attack to take out one of Muzinel's 7 platoons and manage to pull it off without many casualties. They secretly stumble on the slaves Muzinel had taken captive and come up with a battle strategy. While setting the slaves free, they substitute some of their forces to take their positions in disguise. The well-planned strategy plays out perfectly as they manage to catch the next platoon completely off guard and obliterate them all, although they lose some soldiers in the process too. Their stealthy strategies continue until Curies finally surrounds them with his forces and starts attacking. This time around, the Silver Meteor loses most of its soldiers, and at this point now, the rest of them are just fighting to stay alive. Just when Lori and Tigri are about to accept their fates and die royal deaths with pride, reinforcements from different angles appear and join them. 1,500 soldiers sent by Mashes, another 1,500 soldiers sent by Hughes, and 2,000 on the orders of Roland in a letter before he took his royal exit, making a total of 5,000 soldiers on their side. The enemy still tries to press on, but they end up losing over 6,000 soldiers. Curies then immediately orders a retreat. While in retreat, Curies waits for a specific report that will determine his new course of action. The report then arrives that the fleet he had left behind to attack Brune's southern harbor has been sunk by Duke Thénardier. Realizing he stands no chance against the multitudes unfolding, he decides to withdraw from the war. He claims he doesn't want to be the one to lose composure, so he'll just make it seem like green arrows, Tiger's aura points strongly exceed even the late Rollins. It's a complete victory for the Silver Meteor stormtroops. After the battle, Tiger passes out from exhaustion and Lori tries to use it to her advantage to taunt Ellen, who had just returned, by making it seem like he had slept off in her arms. Of course, it works. The following morning after Tiger wakes up, the two girls get into a petty argument about it. They then put him in a tight spot of deciding who he'd rather hang out with among the both of them. Thanks to Rurik, who saved his ass by reporting that Lori's help is needed in the supply management section, Tigra would have been dead-ass toast. Before she leaves, the smooth Rizzler still tells her they'll meet up another time, in a way that doesn't make Ellen suspicious. Tanjiro really has a lot to learn from this Spitgain master. Later that night, Ellen and Tigra hang out and talk about their separate battles. Tiger apologizes about the number of her men he got killed in the quest of achieving his goal, and she tells him not to fret about it. The two of them then lie on the grass outside and enjoy the view of the stars together, hand in hand.
Nice.
After beating Muezzin and traveling for 4 days, Tiger and the Silver Stormtroops hide in Fort Perche. This is made possible thanks to their new alliance with Emil of the Order of Perche. The next morning at Perche Castle, Tiger and his crew are taking a well-deserved snooze. Suddenly, Tina, the Vanatus of Osterode, makes a surprise appearance in Tiger's bedroom via a magical portal with her stealthy entrance. From his deep sleep, Tiger, who seems to be a man of culture, subconsciously gropes her chest and gets a good feel for himself. Tina, on the verge of losing composure, just says he's lucky he's asleep. If not, his head would have been 10 miles apart from the rest of his body by now. She then calmly whispers that they'll meet each other again soon as she vanishes through her creepy portal. Later that day, Ellen expresses her gratitude to Lori for joining Tiger in her place against the Muezzin army. She then immediately switches up like the other side of a pillow and declares that since she's back now, Lori should scram, but Lori insists that Tiger still owes her a favor. Later, during a council meeting with Mashes, Tiger, and Lim, Regin makes an entrance, and with Tiger's encouragement, she drops the bombshell that she is actually the supposedly dead Prince Regnus. A plot twist that shocks not only everybody sitting in the room, but the people watching this recap too.
What?
The princess had been identifying as a prince all this while. What a twisted world. To confirm her royal lineage, Tiger decides to take her to Lutetia, the capital of Artesium, where a secret door that is known only to the members of the royal family awaits. In Brune, Thenardier stands in admiration of the 5 dragons presented to him by Drekavac, a dragon dealer who claims they should have no difficulty tearing through 2 war maidens or 10. Meanwhile, in Lutetia, Ganelon is lounging in his room, eagerly plotting a parting gift for the winner of the showdown between Tiger and Thenardier. Meanwhile, Injected, King Victor gives Sophie a side quest to head back to Brune. Back in Brune, the Silver Meteor Army hears about the spectacular defeat at Montauban. With the aid of the dragons at his disposal, Tiger, growing impatient, urges Regin to hurry to Artesium. Thenardier wants to play petty like Kendrick Lamar and lead the dragons to Alsace to cook Tiger's home, but Tiger crosses him in Artesium. On the Vincennes Plains, the Silver Meteor Army and Thenardier Army clash like Spartans. Ellen and Laurie are taking on dragons like they're in a Dragon Ball Z episode, while Tiger, Rurik, and the rest of the gang handle the main force. With their Vitas, Ellen and Laurie make quick work of the first 3 Earth Dragons, but the remaining 2 are as strong as Naruto's tailed beasts, so they put up a fight worthy enough to be in the Avengers Endgame movie. Just a little salt and the girls will have been human KFCs, but they use some main character plots coupled with the power of friendship they never had to generate some Sword Art Online level of power and slay the giant fire-breathing lizards. It's already dawn and the beasties have drained all their energies already, so all they can afford to do is put their faith in Tiger and expect him to pull a fairy tale miracle and defeat the main army.
Good job!
As expected, Tiger and the remaining soldiers can obliterate all of Thenardier's forces in the Vincennes Plains, but that's just a fraction of Thenardier's real army. After a hard-won battle on the Villacrez Plains, the Silver Meteor Army finally gets some chill time. Ellen barges into Tiger's tent and meets him sleeping. Recalling him to be a heavy sleeper, she decides to test his hunting instincts. She poses as a dangerous animal ready to pounce on him with bloodlust like Heki, and Slumberman surprisingly reacts to it. His reflexes kick in as he gets up in an instant and pins her to the ground. I guess he's worth the hunter title after all. Later that day, Tiger leads an expedition to escort Regin to the secret door, which eventually leads them to the dungeon of the palace, where they are crossed by Thenardier and his goons, who suddenly start attacking. They try to fight back, with Ellen charging towards Thenardier. Surprisingly, Thenardier happens to be a very strong warrior. He just plays with her for a bit and then gets bored, so he decides to leave. All of a sudden, the dungeon starts collapsing, so everybody is forced to retreat. Within the chaos, Steed, Thenardier's right-hand man, tries to kill Princess Regin, who may end up being an obstruction to them inheriting the throne. Tiger tries to ward him off, but trips in the process, so Steed tries to take care of him first. Tiger gets pinned by Steed and is about to meet his end when Bertrand, Tiger's loyal subject, pulls a Kemina from Gurren Lagann and takes the blow for him. Just as Steed processes his shock, another chunk of the roof comes down, burying them all in a dramatic one-piece worthy twist. Tiger later wakes up feeling mostly fine, unlike Steed, who is now part of the rubble. After giving Steed a classic anime eye closure, he remembers Bertrand and goes in search of him. He finds him in an open area, looking as terrible as All Might in his normal form. Bertrand suddenly starts talking like he's seen the ghost of Urs, Tiger's father, telling him his son has surpassed expectations. He then looks at Tiger and tells him he enjoyed watching him grow, and that he's proud of what he has become. His final words are that Tiger takes care of Tita, and then he passes away. Tiger then does that dramatic scream where the camera zooms out to like 3 galaxies away. Meanwhile, Ellen and the squad, which has escaped the dungeon crash, are running towards the main entrance when a massive explosion shakes the ground. Seeing a familiar power signature, Ellen sprints to the crater to find Tiger passed out, overworked by his black bow. She also stumbles upon Bertrand's already stiff body. They take both the living and the dead back to camp, where everyone pays their last respects to Bertrand for being an Itachi to Tiger before burying him. At this point, it is unclear if Tiger can recover in time from Bertrand's death and lead another epic battle against Thenardier. Ellen visits Tiger, who is still stuck in his sad and I am protagonist phase over Bertrand's demise, despite using the Black Bow's ultimate move to escape the rubble in the dungeon. Ellen gives a rousing pep talk about pride and composure, and Tiger finally realizes that as a main character, he shouldn't be caught lacking, as it lead to negative aura points and steez reduction unless he's Tanjiro though. Dear Tanjiro, if you're watching this right now, I want you to know that no offense was intended.
Sorry.
Later that night, Tiger and Ellen have a chat about the future of Alsace and Leitmeritz, where she makes him understand that they can win without fighting. All they have to do is restore the highway connecting Alsace and Leitmeritz. This completely changes Tiger's perspective. The next day, Baduin shows up at the Silver Meteor Army HQ like a messenger from the Hidden Leaf Village, bringing urgent news. He informs Regin about the king's brief moments of recovery and his worsening condition from Ganelon's repeated poisonings, urging her to hurry to Nice. Tiger promises to take her safely to her father at least before he passes away, but knowing Thenardier will want to play the role of the stubborn final boss, the squad plans a climactic showdown. The last battle finally begins and the two armies clash in the wilds of Maryville Fields. Regin, who has been made the supreme commander, realizes within minutes of the battle that the opponents are fighting like a bunch of wobbly kids. Mashes then confirms that since Steed, Thenardier's right-hand man, who happened to be their strategist, is no more, they're just plainly fighting on instincts like Bakugo in My Hero Academia. Tiger and his crew run into Thenardier and he asks him why he attacked Alsace. Thenardier just replies like a normal villain would that it was because Tiger teamed up with Jected and he wanted to crush Alsace to prevent him from becoming OP. Tiger, now fully pissed, declares he wants payback for Alsace and Brune, and Thenardier equally claims he has a score to settle since Tiger was the one who killed his son. Their duel begins and Tiger grabs an arrow and boils with anger while trying to fuse with the goddess for this final battle. Ellen, seeing his rage going out of control, gives him a reality check punch to the face, knocking his arrow to the ground. She tells him not to let his hatred take over. Tiger cools down and prepares another arrow. This time, a cool MC move, he tosses away his remaining arrows, declaring he only needs one to prove his worth. Thenardier charges with his Madara-type sword and Robin Hood, Tiger releases his shot aimed right for Thenardier's head. The big boss swings his sword to block, but somehow the arrow dodges the strike and hits its mark. Not the David and Goliath ending. Ellen, baffled, asks her sword Arifar if it had a hand in this rigged battle, but it denies any involvement. Lori then chimes in, saying Tiger must have allied with the wind itself. After the battle, the brave warriors are celebrated all over the land like prime Justin Bieber. They meet with the Bidradin King, who bestows upon Tiger the title of Lumiere, Knight of Moonlight, and grants him a huge reward as well. Hearing this, Badiouin thinks to himself that anyone who had received that title always ended up being the King of Brune. A few days later, the king quietly levels up to the great beyond in his sleep.